Holidays. Don't you love them? Well, actually, no, I don't. Not all of the time. There are so many people's wants and needs to balance. What I've found is that as my children and my husband have become older and more opinionated and want to say, then the holidays that I always used to be in charge with have now become a plethora of different ideas and wants and needs. So now if we're going on a holiday, let's say to Hawaii, I actually have to sell it to the family. I know what you're thinking. Really? Well, for a start, my son Jack and Paul don't really like the beach. It's sandy and it's hot and it's stressful. But I do. Point number one. And then as a judging type, Jack loves a plan, which I hate because as a perceiving type, plans make me feel hemmed in. Paul's an introvert and enjoys time alone or just with me. Bummer, because as an extrovert, I want to travel with friends and I love spending lots of time with them when we're on holiday. Luckily, Cassie, my daughter, likes to go with the flow and loves people too, so I've got a friend in on that one. So how do you sell your holiday so that everyone's happy? Because seriously, they're all just lucky to go away, aren't they? Knowing their personalities is so valuable because actually otherwise I would never recognise their needs. I'd be thinking that everyone thought the same as me. Plenty of sun, sand and shopping. However, it can also take a lot of stress out of life because if you can give people a little of what they want, they'll usually put up with the things they dislike. Giving Jack the chance to book several things before we leave gives him something to look forward to and some control over his holiday. Let's face it, we all make sure that he books something that we like. So I just have to go with the knowledge that I will be hemmed in some days. Planning time alone without others involved will satisfy Paul, and even giving him an option on whether he wants to participate in the extrovert's fun time with friends gives him a choice. But it's not like he really wants to be alone the whole time, although the other day he did mention that he wouldn't mind going to an island by himself for a few days. That is hell for the extrovert. He just wants to regain his energy and not exhaust himself with too much social contact. Now this might seem stressful, but if you know why and you understand your tribe, then you're far more likely to have a holiday that everyone enjoys. As discussed in an earlier podcast, we're constantly in sales in every part of our life. We can all sell, but some personalities are naturally better salespeople. Remember, we can all use the dimensions of the MBTI. It's just that life feels easier if we're in our preferred space. Today we're looking at the ENFP. A very famous ENFP, Walt Disney, once said, "All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them." This sums up the ENFP's outlook on life. They're an extrovert and they have contagious enthusiasm, a great love of people and activities, and they use their intuitive big picture to focus on creating possibilities that help other people explore their creative potential. They're feeling type decision makers, caring, warm and compassionate. And as perceiving types, they love to go with the flow of people's different ideas and plans. The ENFP is an open, flexible personality. However, their Achilles heel can be that when there's a shiny, bright thing in the horizon, they find it hard to stick to finishing the current jobs they have before pursuing to that new stimulus that's on offer. It can be a real effort to engage in the more mundane and boring things in life. I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Our ENFP guest today, Peter Daniels, has overcome his Achilles heel by creating ways that he can help himself and others stick with the routines and habits that create great salespeople. This is a huge part of his development of his successful business today. Peter is a sales magician. At just 18 years of age, he started out in real estate in Adelaide. He excelled in this industry, but at 32, he sought a new challenge. He joined an international personal development organisation where he became one of their leading salesmen. After 7 years, he became the first licensee of Leadership Management Australia. Great success followed, but Peter had other ideas. In 2000, Peter sold out of his business with a view to develop Australian leadership, sales and service programs, and his present company, Lead Australia, was born. Now these days, Peter is an accomplished speaker and presenter, and his approaches and processes are unique because they work. He's been married for 40 plus years. Kudos for that. And has 2 grown-up children and a beautiful granddaughter, Eliza. Hi Peter, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks Kate, glad to be here.
It's so great to have you here. You and I have shared many experiences together as colleagues and friends, and I've learnt so much about sales from you. You've got so many wonderful stories and information up your sleeve that I'm looking forward to hearing about today. Now, the first question that I'd love to ask you is, as you and I discussed, you were in sales well before you were an adult. So how did this come about?
Well, I started off selling, of all things, underpants in Myers in town. My father thought that I needed a job, and he was probably right. And so I got a job there when I was probably 14, something like that. Enjoyed it. Certainly learned a lot. Got to engage with a lot of different people. And funny thing, I even sold the then Premier, Don Dunstan, underpants because nobody else would serve him. And I thought, well,
why wouldn't they serve him?
I don't know, but I think there was a little bit of, this is the Premier. Maybe we got to be careful or something. But I went up and introduced myself and had a really good chat, and he was very decent to me.
So what was your next job after that? Did you leave that one? I mean, 14 is pretty young to be working in a department store these days. Of course, we wouldn't actually employ anyone at 14 these days to do that kind of job. So what was your next job then?
Well, the next thing I did was probably going aligned along with that was that I was selling papers. I kid people that one of my first jobs was working for Rupert Murdoch, but it was just selling the Adelaide Advertiser on the corner of Edward Street and Winston Avenue at Door Park. And you learn a lot from that too. To be fair, it was in years gone by. It was 50 years ago, but it was a fantastic experience. Yeah, and I learned that there was an opportunity that if you smiled a lot, people would often give you a tip,
yes,
which was an extra amount of money, and you'd fold the paper nicely, you'd keep it dry. And I seemed to do all right on that spot. And they gave me another spot, which was further down on Corunna Avenue and South Road. And I had significantly more papers, but there were a lot of factories there. And I found out very quickly that if you stand on the corner, you can sell some newspapers. But if you go into the factories, you can actually sell more of them.
Oh, smart move.
So I wandered into all of these factories, got to know people, and they would rely upon me to come and deliver their paper to them. And I'd even drop off some on the way home to particular homes. And I loved it. It was a learning experience.
Wow. So you actually recognise that good service got you better business even at that age, and that to do little extra things in your business when you're selling draws in customers. Pretty smart. Pretty smart.
Well, it does, and people go where they're invited and stay where they feel loved, and I learnt that on pretty early on, and it paid off because it then took me into different arenas of sales, and.
So what was one of these other arenas? Like, you and I were talking about some paving slabs at one time. Can you give us a bit of a story around that one?
Yeah, we were. I was bored. I'd done Myers. I'd done papers. And then I thought, I'd like to get into some sort of a little business or a little enterprise of some sort. And I remember being with my mum when I was about 15 and a half, and that's not a cool thing to do, to go shopping with your mum at 15 and a half.
Not at all.
Not very cool at all. But I was there. I was at Target at Edwardstown, and she was shopping, and I decided to go wander around because in those days they had a landscaping section out the back. And I wandered out there and saw some red gum paving slabs that were cracked, and I thought they were pretty simple. It was just a matter of cutting a red gum tree down, which is not very green now, but we had a farm and a paddock full of other trees, and I thought, hang on, I can do this. So when I got home, I sort of worked out a bit of a plan by myself, and I rang a gentleman by the name of Mr. Lascock. And Mr. Lascock owned several garden stores in Adelaide.
I remember.
And I
Yes, he
figured
did.
there must be a Mr. Lascock. So I hopped on the phone and rang and I said, could I please speak to Mr. Lascock? And in those days, you were able to get through to people. And I spoke to Mr. Lascock and I explained that I have a small business. I cut red gum and other gum paving slabs. We've got a farm down in Yankalilla. And whether he would be interested in me giving him a price for some red gum paving slabs. And he was quite an interesting man, actually. He said, well, yeah, young fella, what's the deal? And I had to think really, really quickly because I hadn't really worked out a deal, but I knew that they were selling for $1 each. And I figured, well, gee whiz, maybe if I pitched it at 50 cents each. So, and again, this is 50 years ago.
Yes, 50 cents was a lot of money back then.
It was. It was worth something back then. And so I said, well, 50 cents, sir, 50 cents. And he said, well, what about your minimum order? Well, I hadn't thought of a minimum order. Immediately I thought, well, it's got to be significant enough. I'll make it 100. He said, okay, and what about a delivery fee? And I said, there's free delivery, because I knew my dad had a trailer. And so I ended up getting an order from him that blew me away, frankly, because he said, yes, I'm happy. I will put in an order for 100 for each of my 4 stores.
Oh, no. So how busy were you?
All of a sudden, I had to come up with 400 paving slabs for $200, and I had a chainsaw down at the farm, and I knew how to use it. It was a big brute. It was a 125cc engine. It had 5 feet of chain on it, and I learned how to sharpen that and go down to the gullies where there was an issue with falling trees, and we'd cut those up. And sure enough, we had a really good relationship with Mr. Lascock, and I was able to work it in through my school holidays so that I could do that during my school holidays.
Fantastic. So did the family help out on that one? I mean, that's a lot of wood chopping.
Well, if you speak to my father today, he'll recount many stories about that. But basically, I did it all myself. He drove the car because I didn't have a license, and he dropped them off kindly. Right. But that enterprise went on for a couple of years, and I have a scar on my left wrist where I leaned over. I used to sharpen the saw so sharp that if I touched it, it would leave a mark. And I have a scar on my left arm near the wrist where I just leaned over to grab something, and I just touched the bar. Fortunately, the chainsaw was off, and it took a piece out of my arm. That's how sharp I used to have it.
Oh, my goodness. Workplace safety today, Peter, that would not have been happening at all.
What
a wonderful story. It just shows how some people are just naturally entrepreneurial and big picture thinking and keen to do something and to make something of their lives. So what was your next job after that? And then I'd love to just know where you went after that, because then I'd love you to tell me about a time that perhaps you didn't succeed and how you overcame that. But so you're really 15 at the time. So what was your next job?
Well, my educational pathway wasn't working out as well as I'd like, or as well as probably the market would have liked. In fact, I ended up having, for want of a better word, 2 of the happiest years of my life in year 10. And I think that actually means that I failed. So that was a failure, but I enjoyed it, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. But the next thing I got involved in was I did some renovations for properties that my father was buying and selling, and also worked for a trailer company called Bob's Place at Darlington. And because I wasn't well schooled, they put me in as a storeman, and I lasted 3 days.
Right.
And I ended up talking to the owner of that business, Mr. Bob Alcock, who was a very fine man. And I said, Mr. Alcock, I don't think this suits me. I need to be out with people. He said, well, what have you got in mind? I said, could you please give me an opportunity to get involved in sales, and I'll do the rental side of the business and the sales side of it. And he said, yeah, okay, well, we'll give you a trial for a week. Well, that lasted about 11 months, and I learned a lot about working with people doing that, and a lot of sales. And they had a $7,000 triple horse float that they were selling. And it wasn't selling, but I was able to sell that in that 11 months. And that was a little goal I had set. Yeah, it was a great time. And then went on to real estate, got my real estate exam, did that for 13 years. Last 7-8 years of that, I helped manage a business, but in my top year, I sold 128 houses in Adelaide, and now I do training.
Wow. And that's an amazing amount of houses too. When you think about that, how long ago would that have been? Maybe 45 years?
That'd be 30 years ago.
30 years ago. That's just huge. So you have the gift of the gab, so they say. So tell me about a time when you failed and how you overcame that and what your learning from that experience might have been.
Well, I might go back to that educational thing, if I may, rather than a sales failure, for want of a better word. Because I think in sales, how you process that is really important. I heard a guy say it once, there's no such thing as failure, there's only a result. And I think that's a really good way of looking at things. But if I go back to my education, the second time through year 10, I was introduced to the new teacher, and they brought me out the front after everyone had left and sat me down. And Mr. Hammond said to me, Peter, I've heard a lot about you. And I thought, oh, what's coming? And he said, I don't believe any of it. I said, really? He said, we are going to have a really good year, Peter. Year 10 is going to be really good. It's going to be easy, and you're going to sit in front of me here at the front, and you're going to do some extra work for me because you'll be able to do this easy. And it was the first time that someone like that in an authority situation had some belief and some help towards me. And did he do a bit of a inverted commas sales job on me? Yeah, he probably did. But he gave me some belief. And from an educational point of view, my dad gave me an opportunity to get a .22 caliber rifle if I got 3 A's. And
a little bit of motivation there.
A bit of motivation, and that was the only year and the only term I got 3 A's was with Mr. Hammond.
Fantastic. And doesn't that go to show you too that, you know, sales with other people, it's not always a sale that is part of a job. It's a sale in human life to somebody else.
Exactly right.
To get something.
Exactly right, Kate.
Yep. Absolutely. So what did you change moving forward to where you are today, to become the salesperson that you are today? Did you just learn more about the business? I mean, you were obviously amazing from a child. What drove you to be where you are today?
Well, I think it's a learning curve, Kate, and I need to say that a really big part of sales is not the telling and the talking, but the listening. And it's also understanding what you do, which is personalities.
Yes.
I wasn't really exposed to that. I sort of knew that there were different personalities, but I'd never really studied any of that. And I read a book by Florence Latow that sort of opened my eyes to that whole arena. And then I ended up at a place called Wallaby Creek in Melbourne at a conference, and a guy came up on the Saturday afternoon and talked to us about a disc profile and the different personality types. And of course, since then, there's the fabulous work that you do with Myers-Briggs, and it's opened up my eyes to the different types of personalities that there are out there and how important it is to actually understand a person's personality type and how they process information. So I think sales is a bit about the product and the person and the pitch and the value proposition and how you promote it. But I think it's also more importantly about people and how you understand them and how you relate to them and how you can see their situation, challenge or need from their perspective. And I think that, along with knowing how to prospect and find business, are probably the two big elements that have helped me in my sales journey.
I totally agree with you, Peter. And I do think listening is one of the hugest things, because we're too often listening with a thought in our head of what we're going to say next rather than listening truly to that person. And like you say, I think you actually intuitively grasp a person and where they're coming from. And I know that you've been in sales for a long time, but I think that started in your youth of knowing how to sell to people without being taught it. And for some people, it is part of their natural psyche to actually attune to people, and you are really amazing at that. And like you say, learning, some people might dismiss personalities and dismiss that type of thing, but seeing the change is so incredible. I totally understand that, and I think that's wonderful. Now look, with your natural impulsiveness and love of change, is there a process that you use to help people sell, not only at the professional level, but because we talk about families and parenting and stuff as well, at a family level, how have you been involved in family sales?
Well, our children are growing up now, and we've had a lot of fun actually around the sales space,
right.
as you would imagine.
Yes.
I think if you haven't contemplated the need to learn something about sales and you have a family, it has the potential to come unglued in the teen years. And I think the number one thing, if I may, is to really have good open relationships with your kids and have some fun with them and pick the fights that you really need to have. But we did some things early on in the piece that seemed to work out well, and I'm quite happy to share some of those. One of the things we did was we came up with the idea of a reward for things. Now, I know a lot of parents do that. Some, it's a gold star on the fridge. Others have other ideas. We came up with a gold plate.
A gold plate.
A gold plate.
Yep.
So you could have your meal on a gold plate if you did something worthy of it.
Fantastic.
And so there was this risk and reward thing. And I don't know what's happened with the gold plate. The kids are gone, but the gold plate worked really, really well for a long while. And I think there needs to be some sort of benefit to get people to do things. There's the old one of, someone's got to put the bin out on Thursday night, but sometimes that just has to happen, and develop the habit around that. But the gold plate served us really, really well. And I think if you can do some of those things, they make a lot of difference.
I agree.
And of course, the way you communicate with your children and try and see things from their perspective, and for want of a better word, sell them an opportunity.
So how would you do that? Give me an example.
Well, give you an example. Many times when we're out and about in the park or you're outside, I'd say to our kids, I can see an opportunity. See if you can find it.
How hard did they look?
They'd look, and then I'd say, there's 2 cans under that tree, and there's a bottle over there by the bin. Go and get it and keep it. and I think part of sales is seeing the opportunity for us, but helping other people to see the opportunity. And for want of a better word, we got to help our kids to be able to see the opportunity of how they can become, not just what they can have.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the important part.
I think that's really, really important. Peter, what a wonderful journey. It's certainly been without the challenges, but your positive outlook is just amazing. And as a participant and a friend, I know that sales and selling are your gift. Thank you for sharing your gems of wisdom.
Happy to do it, Kate, and I trust it helps someone else to capture some of these ideas and the principles behind it rather than just the stories.
If you'd like to contact Peter, his information is in the show notes. My belief is that you can do anything you want if you're passionate about it, no matter what type of person you are. But I'm also convinced that knowledge about your personality types can help you recognise your potential strengths, stretches, and understand how to work with them. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my newly launched book, Who is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have a podcast idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies. See you next time.